welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Our next featured author of the hour is the man behind the book Lucius. Let us all welcome Reverend Michael H. Lavery. Reverend Lavery is a distinguished author and a pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church in Maywood, Illinois. With an educational background in theology from Midwestern Baptist College, Reverend Lavery's expertise and passion for his faith shine through his compelling writings. His latest book, Lucius, takes readers on a captivating journey through the life of the eponymous protagonist. Lucius, a devoted soldier of Rome, grapples with conflicting values of loyalty to Caesar and his disdain for the empire's power-hungry ways. Influenced by his late father, Lucius embraces ideals that challenge the Roman principles he was raised with, despising slavery and advocating for the voices and rights of others. As an aged soldier, Lucius embarks on a quest for truth, questioning its very existence. However, his path takes an unexpected turn, leading to a fateful reassignment that brings him face to face with someone who embodies the ultimate truth. Reverend Michael H. Lavery weaves a tale of historical intrigue and moral dilemmas in Lucius. Gripping and thought-provoking, this novel delves into the complexities of loyalty, power, and the search for genuine truth. Join Lucius on his collision course with destiny as he encounters the one who holds the key to his ultimate fulfillment. Let us all welcome Reverend Michael H. Lavery in his Author of the Hour session.
Good morning and welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. My name is Ellie Cassetta and I will be the moderator for this session with Reverend Michael Lavery. I would like to thank Reader's Magnet for putting on this wonderful event. It's international and it gives authors and book lovers and storytellers the opportunity to get to know authors in detail. We are live currently upon all of Reader's Magnet's social media platforms, so don't forget to follow us and to subscribe. And now, let me introduce, as QR has already done, let's introduce Reverend Michael Lavery.
Hello.
Okay. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
How are you?
I feel great. I wish the sun would shine.
Well, it's shining where I am. Where are you?
I'm in North Lake, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. We're about 20 miles from downtown. And we haven't seen the sun here in over a week. I was starting to worry that it burned out, but you say you have it down there? That's a comfort to know.
It will come back. I am in Denver, Colorado. I'm in a suburb west of Denver, and it is a glorious cloudless sky this morning. So I'll enjoy your sun for you today.
All right.
So um, I am I am intrigued by the description of Lucius. And you and I had spoken earlier, and he is a centurion who, if you follow the Bible at all or any Christian religion, you know that centurions were pretty important at the time of Christ's crucifixion. But he comes from a long line of military lineage, and his family is as old as Rome itself, as you say. He was loyal to Caesar, but he was conflicted because he did not like the power and the lust of the empire, or the concept that peace can only come if there's another war. So his father, who died in an early Lucius, while Lucius was young, but he imputed upon him some pretty important concepts that were anything but what the Roman Empire and Caesar did. So tell us a little bit about Michael Lavery, and then what made you become an author?
Well, I'm a pastor. I've pastored Tabernacle Baptist Church for 44 years now.
Oh my God.
And
it's a long time.
Oh, it's a long time.
There should be very little about that congregation that they don't know about you.
Well, I'll tell you what, our congregation's very little. It's very small. I've had to, besides working at the church, I've had to work a second job because most of the folks at our church are not rich people. They're not rich people. And they could never afford to pay me a full-time salary. So in essence, I had to work a second job to support myself and later to support my family. And of course, my good wife, she's been a tremendous help to me.
What did you do? What have you done? What has been your side hustle to your pastor?
Okay, what have been my side jobs? Well, my first side job, which I didn't work very long, I was actually building pinball machines. Oh my goodness. I'd go to bed at night going beep, 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 beep. I mean, because you heard that all day long. Then I got a job as I worked as a maintenance man, janitor at a factory for 10 years. And then after that, I worked in a foundry for about a year. Oh, that was a miserable job. And then I got a job at a box company, and I worked there in the warehouse for 27 years. So throughout my entire ministry, I've been working a second job on top of working at the church. But it's been a blessing, and I've had wonderful people throughout the years who've helped me out. I'm by no means an island unto myself. I've had wonderful people that have helped me along the way.
So tell me, what made you decide to become an author?
Well, I think what happened, one night I was reading my Bible, and I was reading in Luke chapter 7 about the centurion. Mm-hmm. And the centurion had a servant who he dearly loved. And he had heard about this preacher who could heal the sick, and his servant was nigh unto death. And he had spoken to some of the elders of the synagogue and asked them if they would intercede for him with this man, and if they could get him to come to his house, because of course he was a Roman. Not only was he a Gentile, but he was a Roman as well. and he was sure Jesus probably wouldn't want to come to his house. Well, when he was entreated, people began to say, this man who asked this thing is worthy. He's built us a synagogue. He's done these kind things for us. And Jesus said, I'll go. And on his way to the centurion's house, the centurion sent servants out to greet him. And the servants said, our master doesn't feel worthy for you to even come under his roof, but he knows that you are a man like unto him. You are a man of authority. He says to a soldier, do this, they do it. He says to his servants, do this, and we do it. So my master says, all you have to do is say the word, and his servant shall be healed. And Jesus turned to the crowd of Jews who were following him, and he said, I have not witnessed such a great faith. No, not among the Jews. And he said, in that day there will be many that come from the east and from the west, who shall sit down and dine with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, while the children of the promise are cast into outer darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then he turned and he told the servant, go tell your master that his servant is healed. And his servant was healed at that same hour. Well, I read that and I sat down, and when I read the scripture, I don't just read it and say, okay, I read my two chapters a day to keep the devil away, and now I go about my business. I like to read it, and I like to contemplate. So I started meditating on it, and as I meditated on it, the Lord gave me this story. It wasn't like an epiphany. I didn't see anything. The lights didn't flash. It was just like in my mind, I saw this tremendous story. And I sat there just thinking on it. And when I had finished thinking on it, I remember I prayed and I said, Lord, that was a tremendous story. I think somebody needs to write that in a book. Of course, I said, I think somebody needs to write that in a book. And the Lord kind of said, well, I gave it to you. Why don't you write it in a book?
Right. It's yours.
So I kind of, now the Lord didn't speak to me in an audible voice. Of course, he spoke to my heart, but he moved me to do this. And I argued with him. I really did. I was like Moses at the burning bush. I said, Lord, I've never written a book. I don't really, I've never done that. I don't know if I can do that. And the Lord brought the scripture to mind. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. So he basically said, you've no excuses. Get to work. So I got to work. And 3 years later, the book was finished. It took me a while.
You know what? It's interesting how that happens to you, because I had never written a book when I wrote One Caregiver's Journey while I was taking care of my mother. Somehow it comes to you, doesn't it?
Yes.
It takes a while, but it all somehow comes together.
My hardest part was finishing it. I had a publisher, and they'd call me and say, well, how's your book coming? I'd say, well, I'm done, except with the ending. I don't know how to end it. And this lady broke into hysterical laughter, and she said, that's the hardest part of writing a book. It's easy to write a whole story, and then you come to the end and you kind of say, how I finish this, how I bring it all together. She said, just think about it, it'll come to you. And it finally did, but that was the hardest part of writing the book, coming up with an ending.
So have you thought of doing, it's easy for me to say this because I'm done writing, but have you ever writing, and I'm going to ask you the same question as Bookworm, have you thought of writing a sequel to Lucius about any of the other centurions, or have you decided let's see what comes from here.
I am currently writing a book, and but it's not about Lucius. This book is about
Uh-huh.
growing up in my house with my mother and my grandmother.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So it's more of a
it's
Michael
more of
book.
an biographical book.
Um,
But I do have some very good ideas for a future book on Lucius, because I don't want to just leave him hanging. I want to kind of let people know how his work went, the work he decided to do for the Lord, how that went, and ultimately what happened with his servants. And so I kind of want to elaborate on that, but that's down the road a little bit. Hopefully, right after this next book, I will get to work on that. But
so what was your goal? What was your goal as an author when you wrote Lucius? Was it to bring what you had learned and studied to the forefront, or was it something else?
I think it's a wonderful story of salvation. I think it's a wonderful story of a man finding the truth. And there are many Luciuses in the world today. We're living in a world where people are so confused and they're looking
Yes.
for answers and they can't find them. And it's like the old song, they're looking for love in all the wrong places. They're looking for answers in places where they're, and Lucius was in that boat. Lucius is there truth? Maybe this is the only way? Maybe the only way you can bring peace to the world is by killing everybody and just taking over and making people do things your way. Maybe this is the only way you can do it. And he just didn't know. He was seeking truth. And when a person seeks truth, truly seeks truth, God is going to reveal it to him. God is going to show him that truth. And God showed Lucius through, he called him the teacher, listening to the teacher and seeing what the teacher did and how the teacher treated people and how he treated him, a Gentile, and how he treated other people. And then, of course, Lucius was given the odious task by Pilate of overseeing the crucifixion of this man who he so greatly admired. And it was just a moving thing. And I think there are many Luciuses who are seeking truth and need to find truth where truth truly is. And as Jesus told the woman at the well of Sychar, God is truth, and God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So that's what I basically wrote it for, so that people can find the truth through it. And
Did you have a struggle? Did you have a struggle in writing it, or did it just come to you then as you started to write it?
actually, God gave me the story, so I had the story, and I wrote it all down. Writing the story was rather the easy part. Coming up with an ending, that was
That was your
hard.
struggle.
Yes. How do I
That was
end
your
it? Should
struggle.
Lucius die? Well, I thought, no, that wouldn't. I wanted Lucius to do something, to set forth, to do something good, which he did. He did. He was faced with a real quandary. Pilate came up to him, and I really portray Pontius Pilate as not an evil man, a man who's trying to do the right thing. But I mean, Pilate did not want to crucify Jesus. He didn't want to do it, but he was a politician. His hands were tied. They had him over the barrel, and he couldn't do it. And
What
Yes, ma'am?
No, go on. I was just going to ask you about creating other characters other than Lucius. How
Oh,
many other characters are there in the book?
well,
Are there
let's
a
see.
lot?
We have Gaius.
Mm-hmm.
We have, Gaius is another soldier who he meets um, when he comes to Israel. He meets Gaius, and they become like brothers. There's Licinius. Licinius was his commander in Rome when he was working at the training facility. Of course, we have Mark, who was his valet, who was his servant. We have Arius. They were brothers who he bought from the slave auction and gave them their freedom, and they worked for him as servants. Then there was we had our good friend. He had uh, his servant was named. Oh boy, I'm telling you now, I can't think of her name. Oh, that's sad. Chloe was the servant. Uh, Martinique. Who?
Who?
He had a servant from España. She got a letter that they had found her parents in España. She was Spanish, and she left and went back to Spain, of course, with Lucius's blessing. And then Lucius went back to the slave auction and found Chloe. Now, Chloe was a firebrand, and it took a while for her. She just couldn't believe that there was a man who would actually give a slave their freedom, but he gave her freedom, and she stayed with him. Ultimately, she married Arius, who was one of his other servants. And then, of course, there was Pontius Pilate. Then there was a man. Oh my goodness, he was a real antagonist. He fought with Lucius tooth and nail when he came to Rome. He fought with Lucius tooth and nail. Then we have Croesus. He was a commander of a outpost in the wilderness. We have those are basically all of my characters I can think of. There are quite a few.
You have a lot. Which one would you be? If you had to be one of all of those characters, which one would you be?
I think I would have probably been the rabbi. The rabbi of Capernaum. The rabbi of Capernaum was a rather jovial man, and when he met Lucius, his synagogue was in disrepair, and as a matter of fact, it looked like it burned down. And when Lucius came into Capernaum, he asked, what happened to your synagogue? Did you have a fire? And the rabbi said, no. He said, we didn't have a fire. He said, the problem is the Roman tax collectors had been taking everything we have, and we don't have the money to finish it. Without money, you can't build a building. And Lucius said, well, how much money will it cost for you to finish your synagogue? And the rabbi told him, and Lucius said, I'll give you the money. And I mean, the rabbi was shocked. You'll give us the money? Yes. He said, I have the money. And he says, I'll give you the money. And he said, but you're the Roman commander. Why would you give money to me to build a synagogue? He said, because I think the people need a place to worship. And the people have been cheated enough by the Roman government. And he said, I'm going to do something about that. And he did. And I'd probably have been that poor, jovial rabbi. That would have been me.
What's the moral of the story? What's the moral lesson that you want to impart with Lucius?
The moral of the story is simply this: Lucius was a good man. One of the critics, when I had my book critiqued, one of the critics said that there are no Romans like that. There are no Romans like that. And I always wondered how many Romans he actually had known in his life. There were Romans that were virtuous men. Lucius was a virtuous man, yet with all of his virtue, he still was confused. He still didn't know the way of truth. There are a lot of people out there today who are very virtuous people. They are, some of them go to church. I was one of them. I went to church for years and years, and struggled, just like Lucius did, until I found the truth. And the truth is not just in being religious. The truth is not just in going to church. The truth is
Indeed.
in knowing Christ. And that's the moral of the story. It's not by our morality or by our goodness or by our virtue that we attain unto truth. We attain unto truth by accepting what God's provided for us, and that's his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. And that's really the moral of the story.
The moral of the story is to be a good person.
Well,
in spite of what your surroundings are and where you find yourself, because he found himself at a moral high grounds between Caesar and what his father had taught him. Am I right? Or no?
Well, yes, but he had this moral imperative, but yet, as moral as he was, as good as he was, he still felt
had to follow Caesar.
Something's missing. And I felt that way. I went to church every Sunday, and one day somebody walked up to me and asked me a question. I'll never forget it. They said, "Tell me, hey Mike, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, if you died today, would you go to heaven? You're a good religious person. If you died today, would you go to heaven? And I sat there. For half an hour in stoic silence. Now, you'd think I would have said right away, "Sure, I'd go there. I'd go to church every Sunday for Pete's sake."
What a silly question.
I'm doing all this great stuff. Of course I'm going to heaven. Of course. But when he asked me that question, I sat there and actually, it wasn't a he, it was my sister who asked me the question. I sat there and just I didn't know. And there's a lot of people who go to church every Sunday, don't know.
Absolutely. Okay, Michael, we're going to hold this thought until we come back from the other side, and we're going to see whether you went to heaven, whether you think you're going to go to heaven or not.
Okay.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Reverend Michael Lavery. Okay, Fred. Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors. Okay, we're back with
I don't feel so bad now.
back with phone ringing. Yeah.
My phone went off and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't feel so bad
My
now.
goodness.
Thank you.
No, don't feel so bad now. Okay, so let's finish that. So I'm sure in the scheme of big things, you've lived your life as a good man and an honorable man, obviously as a man of the cloth. So we'll just assume that we're going to meet in heaven. How about that, Michael?
Well, I always tell people,
You know, we all have to pay the piper, and we all have to account for where we lived.
yeah,
So,
but one of the great things though is this. We're all sinners. We all know that. We're all sinners. We all have our faults and failings, every one of us, myself included. We all have our faults and failings. But the wonderful thing is that the reason why Jesus was crucified and died for our sins, he was the perfect sacrifice for all the world. I often say if we could get to heaven any other way, then the clouds come down and said, hey folks, listen up, do the best you can, live a good life, follow the 10 commandments, be good to your neighbor, and in the end it'll all work out, and then just ascend back up into heaven. But the fact is that's not what he did.
hashtag soldier. What do you think of when you see the word soldier? Hashtag soldier. What comes
Word
to
soldier,
mind when
I
you
think of
soldier?
Protector. I think of someone who protects us. Of course, in our country they do. In other countries, they're used more like the Romans were, as aggressors rather than protectors. But in our context, I always look at our army as protecting us. Soldier is a protector.
Power.
Power.
Hashtag power.
Power can be corrupting.
Oh,
it can also be very positive. The power of God is very positive. But when men get a hold of power, many times it tends to be very corrupting.
We see that a lot in our country right now.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Hashtag peace.
Peace. Peace is what God gives. Men have never been able to find peace. When you study history, you find out that history is simply a compilation of human conflict. It is. You study history, it's just one war after another. It's the compilation of human conflict. God is the only one who can bring peace. Jesus was called the Prince of Peace. He's the only one that can bring us peace.
Yes. So with that peace, can you find peace within if you're a believer?
Oh, I think the closer we get to God and when we walk with the Lord, we have peace within. But we always have that conflict. There's always conflict in the world. But we need the peace of God in our hearts to kind of direct us on the right path. Because in this world we'll always have conflict. There'll always be some conflicts.
Oh, I agree.
The Apostle Paul said, Truth is God. He is the truth. Jesus is the truth. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So when I think of truth, I think of Jesus. I think of Christ. I think of God.
And do you think truth prevails in the world we live in today?
Men know of truth. But how to incorporate that truth? I don't think we have any, apart from God, we have no idea of how to do it. We keep trying to build a utopia throughout history. We've tried to build utopias, and we never have, because the way of peace we have not known. We're fallen creatures. And I mean, look at the news. When you look at the news, you kind of say, look at our own country. People are afraid to walk the streets. In Chicago, people are gunned down every day. And not just Chicago, but, you know,
everywhere.
The way of truth.
Everywhere.
That's right.
Everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I have said before, you go in the grocery store and people are arguing in the produce department, and the only thing that comes to your mind is, I've got to get out of this produce department because I don't know if one of them has a gun.
I know, you're exactly right. And during the COVID, you know, people didn't believe masks helped. Now, whether you believe masks helped or whether you don't believe masks helped, they told you, wear a mask. So if they say wear a mask, I put a mask on. It didn't matter what I believe. It didn't matter if I thought it would help or wouldn't help or did help. I was asked to do it, so I did it. But people just, I don't know. There's just this thing about being told what to do. And nowadays people have this idea, if anyone disagrees with me, they're my enemy and I have to true to them violently. And that's not true. It's just not true.
No. Hashtag. Bring up the next hashtag. Hashtag fate. Faith. Faith.
Faith.
Faith.
Faith. Faith is something, what we put in something. Some people put their faith in technology. Some people put their faith in wealth. Some people put their faith in strength, their physical strength. Some people put their faith in the government. Why? I can't tell you, but some people put their faith in the government. Where we put our faith determines really where we're at. And I put my faith in the good Lord. After one presidential election, I had somebody call me on the telephone and they said, oh my goodness, what's happened? So-and-so's been elected. The country's going to end. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, don't worry about it. I said, the millennium is not coming in on the wings of Air Force One. So don't worry about it. It's all going to be all right. My faith is in the Lord. Don't worry about it. But people get worked up.
I understand that we have many questions. So you and I are going to talk, and we're going to be entertaining questions from those that are listening to us, which I think is just super. Okay. So what are the difficulties that you had? Andrea wants to know, what are the difficulties that you had when you were writing the book as a reverend?
Well, I'll tell you what, it is time consuming. There's no doubt about that. Writing is a funny thing. You know, I was telling people at church, I always thought writing a book was like writing an essay at school. You know, you just sat down, you just wrote it, and then, you know, okay, I'm done. And writing is not like that at all. You know, it really has to come on you. All of a sudden you get, and then you start writing them down. There's some days I could write 20 pages. And then there's other days I'd sit down and I'd write, and he went to the market and bought a skin of wine, period. Okay, that's all.
How did you handle those writer's blocks? How did you handle those periods of writer's blocks?
I just kind of waited. I remember reading a story about Michelangelo. He was doing the Sistine Chapel, and of course the Pope was really getting on his case. I want this done. We're having this big thing. I want the scaffolding done. I want it done. I want to show it off. And Michelangelo said, oh, okay. And the Pope would watch him. He'd climb up into the scaffold. And 10 minutes later, he'd come down. And the Pope said, where are you going? He said, well, I'm done for the day. And the Pope said, it can't be done. You were only up there 10 minutes. And he said, a man can't paint, he said. A man can't paint what he can't see. So in other words, he said, if I don't see it, I can't paint it. I don't see it. Maybe tomorrow I will. It's something you just can't rush. It comes when it comes. So you just have to wait it out. And all of a sudden, boom, it comes back again. And then you start going like gangbusters. But until that comes,
How fun. How fun. You know what? That is true.
Wow.
Elizabeth wants to know,
you do.
How has the power of God impacted the way we see the truth? In today's world, that's a loaded question in today's world, Michael.
Well, you know what? The is things constantly are changing. The way people look on about things have changed. And many times we think that the same is true with God, that God just changes with the time. The scripture says, the Lord told Israel, I am the Lord. I change not. The things God said were wrong 2,000 years ago, in God's mind, are wrong today. God does not change like men change. So we need to embrace God's truth. And when it comes down to what society says is right, we need to line it up with what God says is right. Unfortunately, what we're doing nowadays, we're kind of doing it backwards. We've been lining up what society says and trying to line up God's word with what society says, trying to make it compatible. And sometimes it's just not. It's just not compatible with what the world today says. It's not compatible, and you can't make it so.
Michelle McDill wants to know, what compelled you to create a story that centers around the time of the Roman Empire, excuse me, Michelle, of the Roman Empire?
Well, because, of course, that was the time of Christ.
You and I talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the centurion, our good friend Lucius lived during that time. So that was one of how did a Roman soldier, with all of his Roman beliefs, actually come to embrace the teachings of Christ?
What else you got for us, Fred? And what was the process for writing your book?
Well, the first thing I had to do was come up with the characters. And that
How did you come up with so many? You have so many characters.
Well, I wanted him to be an extraordinary soldier. I mean, a man of lineage, a man of success in the Roman military, a man of power in the Roman military. And so, of course, there's all kinds of people around him. Some of them are superiors. Then, of course, we have Gaius, who he meets, and Octavian and Croesus, who he meets, and Pilate, who he meets, and then Pilate's wife, Claudia, becomes very close with Lucius because they have a common interest they're both interested in the teacher because Claudia had seen the teacher one time completely by accident. She had seen Jesus teaching on the seaside of the river of the lake of Gennesaret, and she was amazed at his teachings, and she was really interested. And when she found out Lucius had this mission from Pilate to listen to him and discern whether he was a threat or not, she wanted him to report back to her and have a little discussion about it. So these, as the story evolved, people just kept happening, and that was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Did Lucius have a wife? Did you go into any of his? Did he
Yes.
have a family? Did he have a wife? Okay.
He never
And do
had
you
a
talk
wife.
about them?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
He told his servant one time, she lamented the fact, Chloe lamented the fact that one day Lucius would die and his line would end with him because he had no wife and he had no children. And he said, well, I did love once. I had a love. Her name was Drusilla. Her father was a merchant. And while I was away, fighting for Rome, a plague came on the side of Rome where she lived, and many people died, and she was one of them that died. And he said, after her, I never loved again. She was my one and only love, Drusilla. And
Wow.
he had a love, but she died of plague. And he couldn't even find her body. He came back and he was going to look for her body so he could have her buried. But in the ancient times, when there was a plague, they just set fire to that part of town and hopefully kill it by setting fire to it.
Here we go with another question that we've already discussed. Do you think that Lucius would go to heaven after everything that happens in the story?
Well, I think he would, because he met Jesus. Not only did he meet Jesus, but he met the resurrected Christ. He saw Jesus after his resurrection. And he bowed the knee before Christ. And he said, when you were dying on that day, he said, I professed that truly you were the Son of God. But he said, I was wrong in my profession. I should not have said you were truly the Son of God. You were the Son of God.
Wow.
Are the Son of God. He said, you are the Son.
How about that? Do you have another question for us, Fred? Let's see what Fred comes up with, Michael. There we go. Curious to know the chapter that felt the most alive to you while you were writing it. There's a great question.
That's easy. The chapter that felt most alive was when they had their mission to Jerusalem. Pontius Pilate called Lucius and he said, I need you to come with me to Jerusalem. There's going to be trouble. He said, I've heard the Passover was coming, and he said, we've heard that this teacher that you have, he's headed to Jerusalem, and we're afraid that when he goes to Jerusalem, there's going to be conflict between him and the high priests and some of the religious leaders there. And I'm afraid there's going to be trouble. And he said, I want you to come, and I want you to kind of take control of security in Jerusalem. So Lucius comes, and while he's there, of course, there was trouble, and Jesus was condemned to death And Pilate called Lucius in and he said, I want you to handle this. And I can't. That man's my friend. I can't kill him. I can't do it. And he said, I want you to do it because it's either you do this or that animal, Carco, which was the antagonist to Lucius in Jerusalem, or he'll do it. And you know, if that animal does it, it won't be good. So Lucius takes Jesus to the cross. He takes Jesus to the hill of execution. And the crucifixion of Christ is portrayed very graphically. And Lucius is just dying. You know, it's killing him, but he has to do it. And it's very moving. It's very moving.
Interesting that you can write so graphic. And Hoy Slacker wants to know, did you ever think that there would be a different ending to your book?
No, I knew it would end with Lucius following the Lord. I didn't know exactly if he was going to kind of go AWOL. He doesn't go AWOL. He finds a way to serve the Lord while still outwardly serving Caesar. But as Pontius Pilate told him, don't get caught. Because if you get caught, we're all dead. So Pontius Pilate knew what he was doing. He didn't give him his blessing. He said, if you get caught, I'll have to have you executed. You know that. And Lucius said, yes, I know. But I'm willing to try. Pilate said, okay. I'll keep my mouth shut. But he said, if you get caught, we're all dead. We're all dead. So
what an ending. What an ending. We still got almost 10 minutes. Fred, you have some more questions? This is really exciting. This is a great author of the hour, Michael. This has just been.
Well, I've had a great
seamless.
moderator.
Oh,
I've had a great moderator.
And I have a great author, so we're a good team and we're working together. Fred, we have some more questions. Send them to us. Michael's just batting them away like he's standing in the ninth inning, and he's going to win the game.
Oh.
Here we go. Thank you, James. This is James. I hope you watched us to the end, James. We're Michael and I are enjoying this. This is just seamless. What inspired you to write your book? We've talked about this, but we talked about what inspired you to create the characters, but you said you just got that calling.
I got my inspiration from Luke chapter 7, the story of the centurion's the centurion's servant. Look at Luke chapter 7. You'll see that there, and that's where I got it.
If you were to write part 2, would you introduce different characters? You are thinking of writing some more.
Yes.
Will you introduce different characters, or will you just continue with Lucius?
I would keep Lucius and Gaius and his when Lucius is getting ready to go on his quest, he's going to be gone for like 4 years. Probably he won't see his family for 4 years. So his servant Chloe, who is married to Arius, she takes him aside the night before he leaves, and she says, Master Lucius, I'm with child, going to have a child. And of course, this grieves Lucius because He's going to be gone. He's not going to be there when the baby's born. And she said, I'm not telling you this. She said, I'm not telling you this to grieve you. She said, I'm telling you this because I want to give you an incentive to come back. I want my children to know you and to love you the way I know you and love you. So when he meets Jesus on the road, Jesus comes to them and is disguised. But when he meets Jesus on the road, Jesus said, I can tell you're troubled, Lucius. What's the problem? And Lucius said, my servant Chloe is having a child. Chloe and Arius are going to be parents. And he said, I just don't know if I'll ever see the child. And Jesus patted him and said, fear not, good Lucius. You'll see your grandchildren again. You'll see your grandchildren. Don't fear. So it kind of leaves the door open for a future. So there'll be some new characters, but there'll be a lot of the same old characters too.
Well, we have 4 minutes. We have 4 minutes, and kind of sadly, we have 4 minutes because this has been the kind of author of the hour that makes the Festival of Storytellers one of the premier virtual book events. This has just been one of those where we have learned about you, we've learned about your characters, we've pretty much covered the waterfront with Michael Lavery. And I have to tell you that I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Tell me, all right, let's I thank you, Michael, for this. Tell me, let's tell our followers, what is, how can they follow you on social media?
Well, I think they're going to have my website coming up here. They didn't put my website, but how you can follow me on social media by looking www.Reverend Michael H. Lavery, all lowercase, Reverend Michael H. Lavery.com. And you'll get on my website, and feel free to come on, take a look. My book's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and of course from Reader's Magnet. So we'd love to have you pick up a copy, give it a read. It was my first attempt, so please be kind.
And that's www.reverendmichaelhlavery.com.
Yes. Yes.
And I am Ellie Gassetta, and you can follow me on Facebook at Ellie Gassetta, and you can follow me on Instagram at Gassetta Eleanor. And my website is www.onecaregiversjourney.com. And like Michael, our books are available pretty much all over. We have about 30 seconds, and I would like to thank Reader's Magnet for this wonderful event. I invite all of you to follow us on, I would follow us in our booth at the authors' booths. Look at the authors. Authors are live streaming in their booth. Go to thestorytellers.com and follow the menu, and you can just find all kinds of great things. And as we say at Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Festival
of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.